Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a really powerful piece of ancient text.
We are. We're looking at the book of Ezekiel, chapter 34 specifically.
Right. And it uses this really enduring image, doesn't it? The shepherd and the flock. It's a way to talk about leadership,
Yeah.
responsibility, how you care for a
It
community.
really is. It's a metaphor with deep roots.
So our plan today is to unpack how this chapter, well, first it critiques these failed leaders, these shepherds. Then it shows the pretty dire consequences of their neglect.
Yeah, it gets quite grim.
But then it does this amazing flip, offering this vision of like divine intervention and eventually hope. It's quite a journey.
It definitely is. And it starts pretty bluntly. The text kicks off with the sovereign Lord calling out the leaders.
The shepherds of Israel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the very first line, Ezekiel 34.2, just lays it out there. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who only take care of themselves.
Wow, straight to the point. No messing around.
None at all. It immediately flags the core issue. Self-interest. Leaders using their position purely for their own benefit.
Which is, the exact opposite of what a shepherd should be doing.
Precisely. And the text then contrasts what they did do for themselves versus what they failed to do for the flock. It's quite detailed in verses 3 and 4.
Okay, so what were they doing for themselves?
Well, it says they eat the curds, clothe yourselves with the wool, and slaughter the choice animals. Basically, living high off the hog, taking the best of everything the flock produced.
Right, benefiting directly from the ones they were supposed to protect.
And while they're doing that, the list of what they didn't do is just as stark.
Yeah. What did they neglect?
You have not strengthened the weak or healed the sick or bound up the injured. And goes on. You have not brought back the strays or searched for the lost.
So, like, all the essential care aspects, especially for the vulnerable ones.
Every single one. They did none of it. And it wasn't just sort of passive neglect either. The text adds, you have ruled them harshly and brutally.
Oof. So exploitation and cruelty, that's, yeah.
Damning picture of failed leadership.
So, okay, leaders are totally self-serving, ignoring the weak, ruling cruelly. What does that actually do to the flock, to the community?
Well, the consequences are pretty devastating, as you'd expect. Ezekiel 34.56 spells it out.
Yeah.
Because there was no shepherd, they were scattered. That direct link. Lack of good leadership leads to disintegration, chaos.
And when they're scattered, they're vulnerable, right? The text says they became, what was it, food for all the wild animals?
Exactly. That neglect has lethal consequences. They're exposed, unprotected, easy targets.
That's intense imagery.
It is. And the scale of the scattering is emphasized too. They wandered over all the mountains and on every high hill, scattered over the whole earth.
So completely dispersed, lost.
Completely. And the really heartbreaking line is, no one searched or looked for them. Just total abandonment. Nobody was even trying to find them or bring them back.
That level of neglect is staggering. But the text doesn't just leave it there, does it? The shepherds face consequences.
Oh, absolutely not. This leads straight into the divine judgment in verses 7 through 10. God's response is crystal clear.
Which is?
I am against the shepherds. No ambiguity there. A direct stance against this corrupt leadership.
So accountability time.
Yes. They will be held accountable for my flock. And the judgment hits them right where their sin was profiting off the flock. God says, I will remove them from tending the flock so that the shepherds can no longer feed themselves.
So their source of gain is cut off. That feels like justice.
It's a direct reversal. And it's not just punishment. It's also about rescue. God says, I will rescue my flock from their mouths, and it will no longer be food for them.
Protecting the flock from the very leaders who are supposed to protect them.
Exactly. A complete turnaround.
Okay, so this feels like a major shift in the chapter. We move from the problem and judgment to, what? A solution.
Precisely. This is the pivotal moment, starting around verse 11. Where human leadership failed so badly, the text introduces God stepping in directly. The declaration is powerful. I myself will search for my sheep and look after them, declares the sovereign Lord. It's personal. God's taking on the shepherd role.
I myself, not delegating again.
Right. And the description is very tender. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them, so will I look after my sheep. It's about actively undoing the damage.
Bringing them back from where they were scattered?
Yes. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. So, rescue from deep trouble.
And it's not just rescue, it's restoration too, right? Bringing them home.
I will bring them out from the nations and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land. back to the mountains of Israel, a place of safety and belonging.
And the life there sounds, well, idyllic compared to what they had. Good pasture, good grazing land, rest.
Absolutely. I will tend them in a good pasture. Mountain heights will be their grazing land. Lie down in good grazing land. Feed in a rich pasture. It's all about abundance, security, peace. The total opposite of the neglect and scattering.
And again, that personal touch. I myself will tend my sheep and have them lie down.
Yes, and then the text lists the specific actions God will take, and it directly mirrors the failures of the human shepherds, but reverses them.
Let me guess. Searching for the lost, bringing back strays.
Exactly. I will search for the lost and bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak. Every point of failure is now met with divine care.
That's incredibly thorough. It addresses every vulnerable group mentioned before. But then there's that slightly jarring line right after in verse 16.
Yes, but the sleek and the strong I will destroy.
Yeah, that seems to come out of nowhere. We were focused on the bad shepherds, but now it's about judgment within the flock.
It's a really crucial shift.
Yeah.
It shows that God's shepherding isn't just about rescue from outside threats or bad leaders. It's also about establishing justice inside the community.
So internal problems, too.
The standard is, I will shepherd the flock with justice. And that justice applies to how the sheep treat each other.
Okay, so that leads us into the next section, doesn't it? Verses 17 to 22. It's not just the shepherds who were the problem.
Exactly right. The focus turns inward now. God says, as for you, my flock, I will judge between one sheep and another, and between rams and goats.
So distinguishing between different members of the flock, who's causing trouble here?
It's identified as the fat sheep or the stronger ones.
Yeah.
They're the ones being judged for how they treat the others.
And what were they doing? The imagery is pretty strong, isn't it?
It really is. Verses 18 and 19 talk about them spoiling the resources. Like, is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture? Must you also trample the rest with your feet? And the same with the water, drinking the clear water, then muddying the rest.
So not just taking what they need, but actively ruining it for everyone else. Selfishness, basically.
Yes, consuming greedily and carelessly, making it harder for the others.
And it gets worse than just spoiling the pasture, right? There's actual aggression.
There is. Verse 21 is quite graphic. Because you shove with flank and shoulder, butting all the weak sheep with your horns until you have driven them away.
Wow. So outright bullying. Using their strength to push out the weaker members.
Exactly. It's internal conflict, exploitation, and aggression within the community itself.
So the flock was getting it from both sides. Bad leaders neglecting them from above, and stronger members oppressing them from within. That's a terrible situation.
It shows a complete breakdown of community care, top to bottom. And God's promise here is to intervene in this injustice too. I myself will judge between the fat sheep and the lean sheep.
To stop them from being, what was the word? Plundered.
Yes, so they will no longer be plundered. And the implication here is plundered by each other. He'll judge between one sheep and another.
Okay, so after diagnosing both the leadership failure and the internal conflict, where does the chapter take us? It feels like we need some kind of resolution.
We do. And that's what the final section, verses 23 to 31, provides. It paints this picture of future hope, peace, and ultimate security.
How does it solve the leadership problem long term? Is it just God being the shepherd forever?
Well, it's both direct divine oversight and the promise of a righteous human leader. The text says, I will place over them one shepherd, my servant David.
My servant David. That sounds significant, like an ideal king figure.
Exactly. It's often seen prophetically, pointing towards an ideal ruler, perhaps a messianic figure who will govern justly under God. His role is clear. He will tend them and be their shepherd.
So a model of good leadership reflecting God's care, and this restores the relationship.
Yes, I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be prince among them. It's about a renewed covenant, a right relationship between God, the leader, and the people.
And under this new setup, what does life actually look like for the flock?
It's described as a covenant of peace. This means real, tangible security, like getting rid of the wild animals that were preying on them.
The ones that attacked when they were scattered.
Right. They'll be so safe they can live in the desert and sleep in the forests in safety. Think about that. Places that used to be dangerous become secure.
That's a powerful image of change. What else?
Blessings in abundance. Showers in season. There will be showers of blessing. The land will be fruitful. No more famine. Just security and prosperity.
And freedom from outside forces, too. No more being oppressed.
Absolutely. God promises to break the bars of their yoke and rescue them from the hands of those who enslave them. liberation from past and future domination,
So it's like total security, safe from animals, safe from famine, safe from enemies.
and safe from each other because of the justice established earlier. They will no longer be plundered by the nations. They will live in safety, and no one will make them afraid. It's comprehensive peace.
And the point of all this safety and blessing is?
It's fundamentally about relationship and identity. Then they will know that I, the Lord their God, am with them, and that they are my people. And the chapter ends by bringing it home. You, my sheep, the sheep of my pasture, are people, and I am your God.
It grounds the metaphor back in the reality of God's relationship with his people.
Exactly. The ultimate insight is that God's care is like that perfect shepherd, providing what human leaders, and even the community itself, often fail to provide.
So, okay, let's zoom out. We've gone deep into this ancient chapter. What does it all mean for us, listening today?
Well, even though it's ancient, these dynamics of shepherds and sheep feel incredibly relevant, don't they? It gives us a powerful way to think about leadership and community.
Yeah, it really highlights how damaging leadership focused on self-interest can be. The consequences of just ignoring the vulnerable, the ones who are struggling.
And it adds that other layer, too, that the problems aren't always just top-down. That damage happens within the group when stronger members, trample on others or hoard resources.
We definitely see those kinds of things playing out all over, in workplaces, communities, maybe even bigger stages.
For sure. And the text offers this stark contrast. The failure we often see in human systems versus this ultimate promise of divine care, justice, and restoration.
It moves from a really sharp diagnosis of what's wrong to this vision of how things could be under perfect care.
So as you go about your week, maybe think about where you see these dynamics. Where are shepherds failing the flock? Where are the strong sheep making things difficult for the weaker ones? This chapter gives us a lens for seeing those struggles for care and justice.
It's been quite the journey through Ezekiel 34, from that brutal honesty about failed leaders and internal conflicts,
Yeah, pretty tense.
all the way to this profound promise of God stepping in, providing care, and setting up a future of peace under a good shepherd. It's about brokenness, but also about ultimate hope.
It really is. And maybe a final thought to chew on. The chapter points out both the failure of leaders and the failure of community members towards each other.
Right, those two distinct problems.
So, how might recognizing both kinds of failure, the neglect from the top and the conflict from within, change how we look at leadership, how we look at our own communities, and maybe even our own responsibilities to the flock we're part of? It pushes us to look critically, not just upwards, but also sideways.